In this video, here's what we'll cover. What emotional regulation really is. What poor regulation looks like. Why some people struggle more. The 5 core skills. When to seek professional assessment. One of the most common things I hear in my practice is some version of this. I just can't control my emotions. People usually say it with shame, as though it were a character flaw, or proof that something is deeply wrong with them. What they rarely realize is that the thing they are describing is not a flaw at all. It is one of the most teachable skills in psychology. We call it emotional regulation, and it can be learned. Let me start with what it actually is, because the word is often misunderstood. It does not mean not feeling things. Blocking or hiding what you feel is called suppression, and that is a different strategy altogether. Suppression tends to raise arousal in your body, make decisions harder, and lead to more intense reactions later on. Regulation means something gentler. It is the capacity to influence your emotional experience and how you express it. Noticing that the feeling is present and naming it accurately. Modulating its intensity, so it does not escalate beyond what the moment calls for. Tolerating a difficult emotion without being swamped by it, and without acting on impulse to escape it. Returning to a calm baseline after distress, and expressing what you feel in a way that fits the situation. The goal is not blankness, and not relentless positivity. The goal is flexibility, feeling the full range of human emotion, and engaging with it in a way that supports your well-being and your relationships rather than undermining them. So what does difficulty with this look like? It is not one picture, which is why it often goes unrecognized. For some people it shows up as explosive anger, reactions far bigger than the situation, that the person regrets almost immediately. For others it is chronic overwhelm, a sense that feelings are permanently on the edge of unmanageable, where a small stressor produces a response fit for a crisis. Some people experience the opposite, numbness, or shutdown, where the emotional system has gone quiet as a protective measure. That brings its own problems with motivation, connection, and meaning. Impulsive decision-making is another common pattern, acting to escape an uncomfortable feeling right now, without weighing what it costs later, and difficulty returning to baseline, staying in a heightened state for hours after something others would settle from in minutes. Research indicates this difficulty is transdiagnostic. It turns up across many presentations, including depression, anxiety, trauma, and eating disorders. It is a common thread rather than a single diagnosis. Why do some people struggle more than others? There are 2 main reasons, and neither is about character. The first is neurological. 2 brain regions matter here. The amygdala is a small, almond-shaped area that works as the brain's alarm system, scanning for threat. The prefrontal cortex is the more recently evolved part, responsible for reasoning, judgment, and putting the brakes on an emotional surge. When the alarm sounds, a well-functioning prefrontal cortex can evaluate the signal, put it in context, and soften the response. Encouragingly, research shows this circuit is not fixed. It is trainable. CBT, ACT, and mindfulness-based approaches all produce measurable changes in it. The second reason is developmental. This capacity begins forming in infancy, shaped by the quality of caregiving. When caregivers respond to a child's distress with empathy and steady soothing, the child gradually internalizes the ability to settle themselves. When that response is inconsistent, dismissive, or frightening, or when early life includes trauma or neglect, the skill can develop incompletely. That is not a life sentence. What was not adequately learned in childhood can be learned in adulthood. That brings me to the 5 core skills I teach in sessions, drawing on both CBT and ACT. The first is identification, naming the emotion precisely. Research on emotional granularity shows that people with a more differentiated emotional vocabulary regulate better. There is a real difference between saying I feel bad and saying I feel embarrassed about what I said and frightened it damaged the relationship. Naming it activates the prefrontal cortex, which itself calms the alarm. The second is acceptance, an ACT principle, allowing a feeling to be present without judging it as wrong or dangerous. Many people add a second layer on top of the first, guilt about anger, shame about sadness, anxiety about anxiety. Acceptance removes the judgment, not the emotion, and that tends to reduce its intensity and how long it lasts. The third is reappraisal, a core CBT technique examining whether your reading of a situation is the most accurate one available, and building a more balanced alternative where the evidence supports it. A brief email from a manager can look like contempt, or simply busyness. The feeling shifts because the interpretation shifts. The fourth is attention shifting, deliberately redirecting focus to a task or to present moment sensation, so intensity settles enough for clearer thinking. That is different from avoidance, because it is temporary and chosen. The fifth is problem solving. Sometimes an emotion is an accurate signal about a genuinely difficult situation, and the right response is to address that situation directly. Finally, when should you seek professional assessment? When the difficulty is significantly affecting your work, your relationships, or your well-being, or when a mood state persists for weeks and does not shift with your usual coping. Persistent dysregulation can point to depression, an anxiety disorder, PTSD, or another presentation, and the right treatment depends on what sits underneath. If any of this sounds like your experience, help is available and these skills can be built. You can read the full guide, or book an appointment at Potentialz Unlimited in Vista, using the links in the description below. Before you go, here's a quick recap of what we covered. What emotional regulation really is. What poor regulation looks like. Why some people struggle more. The 5 core skills. When to seek professional assessment. And one small thing that really helps more people find this. Subscribe for weekly mental health explainers. Like this video if you found it helpful. Share it with someone who might need it.